He rose more as a process went along because of his versatility that we were able to find out a little bit more about. So I thought that he would just fit in just like a glove here. And then Tesla, he was one, saw him at the Senior Bowl when I went down there and hadn't watched his film yet. But just saw how he was in the run game in the team periods, just his blocking and his size, and he was just being a pest, and he was just pissing off the DBs and the defenders. And obviously it made me just want to completely watch the tape, and then you see a guy that's just big, long, smooth strider, can accelerate, can run. He's a hands catcher, can play special teams, can block, so can do a lot of things. So we're really excited to land both of them. And, really it's just at some point, you're going to run out of, the well runs dry at some points in these drafts. So, you better get the guys that you really, really want, and you got to worry about that other stuff later. So I do look at the stuff later. I do look at, what we have in the future, and when we do trade future picks and all that stuff, I feel comfortable with it. But as long as the guys that we love, we don't flinch, we just go and get them. Again, just like any other receiver, he's going to need to develop, but he's got the tools to play outside and win outside. He's going to have to learn, getting off press and all that stuff, just like they all do. But he's got all the physical tool, and he's got the intangible makeup to be able to overcome that. Obviously I knew all about his story before I met him, but just to hear him kind of walk me and Dan through it in terms of just, him getting to Hillsdale and how that process worked, and even his family and the connection there. And then, going to Arkansas and the higher production the year before, and then it dipped down, and just the explanation from there. And I thought he handled it very professionally, but he's just, I'm sure, I don't know if he told you, but when he came on his top 30 of his, he had on a Lions jersey. And I thought he just did like a cheesy move just to some fanboy stuff. And I'm just like, oh, come on, you didn't put a Lions jersey on. But he said, no, I've had it since the 8th grade, and he's like, what better time to wear it than now? And so I really respected that. But no, he grew up as a Lions fan through and through. But obviously that is not why we were excited to go up there and pick him. We were excited to go up there and pick him because he's big, he can run, he's tough, he's smart, he's a hands catcher, and he blocks, and he plays special teams. And that's why we're excited to go get him. Who are those guys that you just have that, you have that gut feeling about that you really want them? And especially if it's a universal, if it's an alignment, if me and Dan are aligned in our conviction and our love for the player, which usually we are, and, it's just, you just feel it. And so the more that we, looked at, obviously I looked at Tyleek a lot more than until before Dan got in, but I wasn't surprised Dan loved Tyleek because, that's one of his guys. It's his type of player. It's my type of player. He fits right in. He's the type of guy who we like. One shot that he was going to love Tesla. He's everything that we're about. Tate Ratledge. So you have to feel that. You have to feel it in your gut. You have to, and that conviction feels, and it happens at different parts. Like when I first saw Tesla at the Senior Bowl, that's when I was like, whoa, who's this kid blocking like that? Then you watch the tape, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, he blocked. Okay, fine. But he shows all this other stuff, or the same thing with Ratledge. No, I wouldn't say it's a disappointment because we got all guys that we love. So, just like I told you guys before the draft, we could have drafted an edge rusher that plays that position. We could have done that. Y'all would have been happy, right? You guys would have been happy if we would have drafted an edge rusher that,
If he was good.
That's it. That's it. All I hear is edge rusher, draft. So I'm like, well, are you assuming that the guy is really good? Well, that's a whole different story. Can you get in position to get one of those? And, and look, there's, I don't need to get into specifics, but there's times where we made attempts to get one and you just, they got picked before, you couldn't get up, the team didn't. It takes two to trade, or we just had another player higher. But we did the same thing that we do every draft. we picked the highest rated player regardless of position. So that's what we did this whole way through. That's what we're going to do again tomorrow. So, yes, we could have. There's some edge rushers still available. We don't have them ranked as high. You know what I mean? So we're just going to always get the best player. I mean, we're always going to look for edge rushers. I told you guys that. He's got to win rushes. You got to set edges. That's what he's got to do. You know, however he's going to win rushes, whether it's, you know, through pocket, through, you know, long arming, if he can turn speed to power, if he has the instincts, you know, if he had the craftiness with his hands, even if he does not have top juice, but you can still win rushes. So, yeah, I mean, obviously that's why you guys keep asking about that position, right? Because it's like you look at like a Madden diagram, you know, the arrows pointing up like an arrow is drawing. And it doesn't always work that way. That's not how the defensive end positions always play, just an arrow running a hoop. But, you know, yes, he's got to win rushes and he's got to be able to set edges. We're not going to chase a position. Right? The guy has to be a good player and that we love. Now, I'm not saying that they're not good players that other people might have higher. Might be, but we're not going to take a player that we don't value as high just because he plays a position. I've been telling you guys that forever. I don't know why. But, I mean, you guys keep asking a question because we had injuries last year, right? I just want to make that clear, right? Because we had injuries last year. That's why you guys we'll keep looking. I mean, we turn over every stone. There's other avenues in the player acquisition process. So it doesn't stop at the draft. So we'll see. But no, I mean, it's a fair statement. But I mean, just because you don't draft one doesn't mean. I mean, we got one last year, you know, at the trade deadline. So, but that's not. It's more on the top of y'all's priority than it is on the top of our priority. You know, so much goes into the highlights and the explosive plays, and you know those are great, and the 40 times and all this and that. But man, look, the guy's got to have instincts. He's got to be a football player, and he's got to be tough. And there's a lot of dirty work that's involved at that position. And it's a hard position to learn. So you got to be really, really smart. You got to be able to do a lot of different roles. You got to be able to dig out safeties. You got to be able to do a lot of different things in the run game. Like, yeah, we've had an explosive run game for the past years, but that's because our wide receivers block. And if your wide receivers don't block, you can't have an explosive running game. And so, like, those are things. But you have to want to be able to block, you got to be tough. And, you know, there's some guys that might be very explosive and, you know, maybe run fast and have great hands. But if they're not tough and physical, so that's kind of, it's that and also, like, being able to run through a tackle. We knew that we wanted to add more youth into the offensive line. And, like I told you guys, that probably maybe at the end of the season, that's just always going to be at the forefront no matter what. So that's always going to go into every single draft probably. But the defensive line the same way. I mean, that's the foundation that's where games are won. And so I think it's going to always be of importance. It's not going to be just, you know, hey, you got to have this edge rusher. You got to have this, you know, it's just the OLDL, it starts there. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's going to be cool, both those guys being in the locker room together and in that O-line room together. But, yeah, that's just, you know, again, just like Mahogany fit what we're looking for, Tate fits what we're looking for. You know, whether he's got his mullet or not, you know, he's going to – he plays the game the right way. You know, he's tough, he's physical, he's a lot more athletic than you may think, and he's got a lot more versatility than people may realize. And that's really when he really rose through the process for us. But yeah, those guys fit. They're smart, they're tough, they're gritty, and they play our style of ball. You know, I think they're great. You just got to be strategic in terms of how you utilize them. So again, you know, you got to be convicted on the player if you're going to spend it. But, you know, and I know that was 2/3 for next year. You know, quite frankly, we're not picking in the third round next year. But again, those are the decisions that you got to be at peace with. And obviously the comp pick is really, really late. But, a lot of teams discount our picks, for trades, really, really late as well. So all those things come into play when you're trying to trade up. But the comp picks for sure, yeah, they're very valuable. They're very valuable today. Yes, absolutely. We talk about that every year. When do you stop? Spending over a certain amount, and in terms of what you're going to be losing. So, we strategically go over that every year just to see what we can possibly come up with. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's something that's always at the top of mind during free agency. Well, yeah, it's just a line through height, weight, speed. Yeah, no, it's just I say height, weight, speed. It is the opposite of film evaluation, and we're all about film evaluation, and that's the hard part of scouting. That's height, weight, speed is easy, stats are easy, a position listed is easy, but film evaluation is hard to figure it out.